Holy Microwave Meatballs, it's me again, and it's time for a creepy story. Actually, stories in my case, because I will tell you two. The first story I shall tell you all about happened when I was like 7 or 8, more like 7. And you know, I was at basic school and all that, and back in those days, for an hour before the school itself would start, I would attend this activity thing. I don't really know what the word for those is, but basically all kinds of kids would just gather around an hour early at school and just play with toys. Kind of like in kindergarten. I don't really know what was the point, but yeah. Anyway, the school would start at 8 a.m. So I would arrive at school at 7 a.m. to enjoy these little fun times for an hour. And, you know, I never had any problem walking to school all by myself because the school was like 5 minutes from where I lived by foot, so, you know, there was no problem. Until that one fateful morning when I forgot my bag at home, and I didn't realize across the entire journey. I realized only when I arrived at school, and this is literally what happened. I walked into the room, the entrance or whatever, and I literally was like all ready to take my bag off, and then I went like, oh shit, I don't have my bag. Now, obviously, I didn't take it all that well at the time. As a matter of fact, I started crying hysterically the moment I realized I don't have my bag. Because, you know, back then I thought it would be the end of the world if, for some reason, I did not get to school on time, or if I even missed one day in school. God, I was such a proper pupil back then. Anyway, as soon as I wiped off the first flow of my tears, I started running back home, hoping that my brother would still be there, because by that time, both my mom and my dad would already be gone at work, and my brother, well, it was one of his first jobs. I don't really remember when he would get off, but yeah, I had hopes that he would still be home, so, you know, I guess not too early. So I'm sprinting back home, and at that point I didn't have my own keys of the flat where we lived yet, so I arrived, and I'm starting, you know, to ring the bell of our flat, and there's no reaction. Nobody's opening, nobody's reacting in any way, nobody peeking out of the window, nothing. So I'm assuming my brother indeed already, you know, went off. Now, it might be rational at that point to just go back to school and just somehow get through that one day without my bag. But you know, I'm not really sure if at that point I have already been told this by some teacher, or if it was later, but I have been told at some point in my life, in my student's life, that I have absolutely nothing to do in school if I don't have my things, you know? So, instead of going back to school, or maybe trying to ring some of our neighbors, because at that point I did know some of them, I decided to instead just sit there, probably continue crying, and just wait for my mom or my dad or my brother, just whoever would arrive from work first. Now, at this point it was like 7 a.m. approximately, and the earliest my mom would get from work was 4 p.m. So I was looking at like 9 hours of waiting, at least 9 hours of just sitting and waiting. And as I said, I was like 7 or 8 years old. More like 7, maybe even 6. This could have been the first year, I don't even know. Anyway, oh yes, and this was like, it wasn't winter, but it certainly wasn't summer or spring. I'm saying this because even though it was almost 7 a.m., it was still dark. Well, not completely dark, I mean the sun was slowly rising already, but the street lamps still were on, you know, and it was pretty dark. And so I leaned against the wall with the post holes, whatever. I slowly slid down on my ass. I kept crying, and I kept going on from my head how I'm just gonna sit here for all that time until my mom comes back, or my brother, or somebody. And I don't know where this stranger, this random man, walks by and notices me and starts approaching me. And he's like, "Oh, what happened, little boy? Why are you so sad?" And I'm like, I don't even remember what I told him, but I guess I kind of explained the situation to him. And he went like, "Oh, well, you don't have to wait here. You can come with me, and you can come with me to my home, and you can wait there." And, you know, I pretty much instantly agreed to go with him. I started standing, I stood up, slowly, but I stood up, and I started approaching him, and I was totally ready to go with him wherever he would like to take me. And then my brother appears on the other side of the door, and he opens it, and he says, "Yardu?" That's what he called me. That's what he still calls me. And he's like, "What are you doing here, man?" And he's like, he checks out the dude that was trying to kidnap me. Maybe, I don't know. But I guess it's very likely that I would not end up very well if I did go with that man, because the moment he saw my brother and he saw that he knows me, he just went like, and he ran away, pretty much. If, like, the man appeared 5 seconds earlier than he did, or if my brother was 5 seconds too late. Seriously, this is a completely true story. It was the first time that I remember that I ever hugged my brother, and it was one of the last times as well. As for the second story, the more horror-esque one. This took place like only a couple of years after this little thing. I was still overly attached to my mother, and me, my mom, and my dad, we went to Slovakia, whatever you want to pronounce that, to my parents' friend's cottage, and the adults were drinking. I was supping my juice. I was the only kid around there, so that was kind of boring, but yeah. And then my mom takes off with this woman while I'm in a toilet. So, I come back outside and I don't see my mom anywhere, and I'm instantly like, whoa, hold your horses, guys. Where the fuck is my mom? Not exactly what I said probably, but something in those lines. And my dad is like, "Oh yeah, she just walked the woman to her place." Now, at that time, I had no freaking idea where that woman lived. I had no idea how much distance were they to cover. But the worst images just started flowing through my mind. Like, oh my god, it's totally obvious she lives really far away, and they walked through that forest, and oh my god, there are bears and dragons and rapists in this forest, that's for sure. And but I was cool. For like an hour I was still cool, but this was summer. It was like 9 p.m. The light was still there, but in that area there were no street lamps whatsoever. So once it got dark, it was pitch black dark. No street lamps. It was, as I said, it was in the middle of a forest pretty much. And it gets dark. It gets that pitch black dark, And my dad is like, okay, I gotta go sleep. And I'm like, Dad, but Mom still didn't come back. What happened? What if something happened to her? Now, my dad at this point could tell me, don't worry, that woman lives actually very near here. It's like not even 100 meters from here. They probably just continued drinking there, and your mom probably fell asleep, and you know, it'll be fine. But my dad was too drunk to tell me anything reasonable, so he just went, nah, nothing happened, everything will be fine tomorrow, kid, don't worry. Thanks, Dad. And, you know, the other adult guys that were there were no help either, because they all were drunk, just like my dad. And, you know, it was like 12, I'm guessing, p.m. Yes, it's p.m. It's definitely 12 p.m. Yes. Anyway, it's roughly that time. My mom still didn't come back, and, you know, all the adults went to sleep. And I was still sitting there outside all by myself, still waiting for my mom. As I said, I was overly attached. At about 1 a.m., I gave up. I was completely and utterly, you know, accepting the fact that my mom is probably dead or dying right now, somewhere out there. And so I went upstairs and I went to bed. For the next hour or so, I kept crying and crying and crying and talking to myself, going through, you know, all the scenarios, all the possible scenarios. I'm telling you, I think I was like 10 or 11 at that time, more like 9 or 10. So I'm talking to myself, and I'm trying to come up with, what am I gonna do the next day? What am I gonna do the next month? What am I gonna do the rest of my life without my mother? As I said, I was completely certain she's already dead. But then, you know, then I hear something from downstairs. So I'm like, oh, that must be Mom. So I run downstairs, and, you know, there's nothing, there's nobody. But I notice a red little something on the door frame that I think wasn't there before. That was ketchup. That was ketchup that was there already like a long time ago, and it was like dried out, so it looked even more like blood. And you know, but you know, when I saw it, I was like, oh my god. Mom crawled back and she leaned against the door frame, and she's totally wounded, and and I started screaming, Mom! Mom! And there was no reply from anywhere. And then I hear the toilet flush, and I slowly turn around, because I'm certain it's not my mom, because if it were my mom, she certainly would have replied to one of my screams, right? So I'm like thinking, maybe it's the killer, it's the rapist, it's the bear. And the door opens, and it indeed is my mom, completely wasted. And she's like, hi! And then we just went upstairs and we went to sleep, all peaceful and all. Oh well. So, I guess none of those stories was particularly creepy, especially since I'm like all freaking smiling and laughing all the time through. Then again, I never was very good at telling creepy stories. Hell, I never was very good at telling any stories, but yeah, that's my contribution, folks. Now I certainly hope that more of you will join in, and I certainly hope that more of you still will also do the 100 Things video. By the way, shout out for Reggie, or Reggie, or Reggae. Really not sure how to pronounce that, dude, sorry. As a thank you for making the video after all. Alright, see you later!